Hello, and welcome to another episode of Stew in the Nut, an online radio show and podcast focused on national security, policy, politics, and selfless service. We're here to give you an honest opinion, different perspective, and hopefully a few laughs. We do this by not only interviewing guests, but also sharing our own perspectives and asking you, the listener, to interact with us on our chat room, via our Facebook page, and of course, on Twitter. Keep it funky. Oh, yeah, we are back, everyone, and welcome to another episode 256, I think, of Stew in the Nunn. We have been away for a few weeks. July has been a busy month, a lot going on. And, I think I told you guys back in early July, maybe the week before the 4th, I don't remember, that it probably was going to be one of our last live shows. We were going to a format we're going to start recording, and we are still going to do that. But, man, there's so much going on, so much happening, and Toby and I both felt like we've been away just for the last few weeks, that we've been just, missing the opportunity to cover a number of these things. And even though Toby can't be here tonight, he's enjoying some great quality family time. As you can see, I am joined by our sidekick, usually guest hosting when I'm not here, but tonight we got him on here filling in for Toby. So we are not one and the same person, because I know some people were like,
we're dispelling those rumors now.
Yes, we are both here. You can see Dr. Mike Simpson and Troy Stewart are two different people, even though we both have epic beards, and he is much more of a badass, and he is here and much smarter because he's a real doctor. I just was a first sergeant, so I kind of act like a doctor to my soldiers, and that was it. But anyways, good to have you on, Mike. Thank you so much for coming on
tonight.
Here. Yeah, man, good to see you. You have been talk about busy. You have been busy too. We're definitely going to get into a lot of that.
Okay.
Because you have been as busy as can be too. But yeah, it's thanks, Rob. Yeah, Doc does have more hair. He's got that going too. So
I don't know. You notice I wear the hat a lot. And if you guys saw the picture, so I posted some IG pictures of me teaching jiu-jitsu, and you can see, man, there's been some storm and damage to the shingles up there. Sure.
Yeah, some say it's because we're wearing hat time. I blame mine on wearing Kevlar for years on end, and the helmet and
I know what mine is. So I try to hide this. I'm on TRT, and my hair loss coincided with when I started TRT. So
what's TRT for those of us?
Testosterone replacement therapy.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. I thought that makes your hair grow. Does it make your hair grow?
Nope. Oh. Nope. Makes your hair on your knuckles grow, and I think I got a little more hair on my chest, but no, it definitely thins your hair on your head. So
I didn't know. So is that a sign of high testosterone?
Yeah. So these guys you ever notice that the guys that you knew who were balding in like their 20s?
Yeah.
They were also the same guys that had these incredibly hairy chests, and they were usually like D1, D2 wrestlers. So in fact, you look at who's the guy that they made the movie about, the Schultz brothers, both prematurely bald, fucking jacked up on natural testosterone. A lot of these guys, you see a lot of guys in the UFC that go bald prematurely, right? And it's because they're guys walking around with high test.
No, okay, maybe that's why Rogan, Joe Rogan's kind of crawling back there too. I always thought it was meant low testosterone.
If you have, it's genetic.
So if you're bald and have a lot of chest hair,
genetic.
Then that maybe that's a good sign. So
that's usually people that have really good testosterone. So.
Okay, there we go. Well, that's it. Strong in the T. But anyway, see, we're going to cover a lot of topics. That's what happens when you have a doctor on. You cover
we're
a
going
lot
to
of
weird
topics,
segues.
so, yes.
Balding and testosterone.
But yes, and it could be some Italian heritage, Rob. I'll give you that. But Rob, the unpaid producer, so he'll go with that. But anyways, it's good to be back. I know we've been gone for a few weeks. We haven't been putting out a lot of updates. Rob has been kind of covering the socials for us, and we really appreciate that. He should do that for all the money we pay him. It's just been, like I say, it's been really crazy. There's been a lot of topics going on. We've talked about this at nth degree, Mike, on this show, that, once President Trump left office, we felt like, man, what was going to, it was going to get boring and things were going to fall off, and we were going to be coming up with like topics to talk about. But honestly, it hasn't been that way. I think we could almost do a show every day, just regurgitating the events of the day, it seems like.
Yeah.
And what is now coming out of people's mouths.
It's, to the uninitiated, to those with short attention spans, it seems boring. because they don't have a tweet to get really upset about and to just harp on all day. But if you're paying attention to what's going on, it's interesting. There's the old Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. We certainly live in interesting times.
Is that a curse? Because
Uh,
maybe it is. Maybe that's an effective curse because that's
yeah, it's not like I'm putting a curse on you. It's a uh, it's one of those things that like can be taken two ways. Oh, interesting times. That sounds kind of cool, but really it's not. So
yeah, because it means there's all kind of crap going on,
yeah,
and
which we definitely have right now. So.
yes, we do, we do. So I got to ask you, as a son of a Green Beret myself, being a son of my dad did 3 tours in Nam, and he had a lot of pictures of skulls around the
Hmm.
around the fire base and stuff. That
Hmm.
skull behind you, that's not a real one, right? There's a
That
fake
is not
one.
a real one. I
Okay,
used to have.
can't get away with that anymore like you could back in the
Yeah,
'60s.
I've never, yeah, I've never owned a real skull. I used to have, it was used to be at one point it was almost like an obsession with me, and I think I got up to like almost 30 skulls. And the thing was every time I would go somewhere, if I would happen to find a skull, so like this one that you see over my left shoulder, that's from Peru. That's palo sangre from Peru. It's extremely heavy. It's this really dense redwood that's naturally shiny like that.
Mm.
Um, this one, I think if I took the beret off it, that might actually be a piggy bank. There might be a
Oh,
slot on top to put coins in. I'm not 100% sure. I used to have just a whole bunch of them. And then when I got married, uh,
that
my wife Denise was like, "So this is interesting. You have all these skulls." And she'd never seen them out because when we were dating, I lived in an apartment. I had them all in a box somewhere,
right.
and then we moved into a house in Carolina Lakes, and they all came
Start
out. And she
pulling
was
them
like,
out.
"Oh, yeah, oh, oh, and there's more. Oh, and there's more, and there's yet more."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh yeah, this one's from Panama. This one's from Ecuador."
You had to. I'm sure you
But
had a Day of the Dead one. Deal one
yeah,
like that. You had the
I'm sure I did.
flowers and
Yeah,
all that stuff on it.
yeah, I had all of that, I had, in fact, I had a couple of different versions of those. Those were a little bit smaller.
Yes.
And what we ended up doing is when we packed up our house in North Carolina to move, that was when I was still a member of the Special Forces Brotherhood Motorcycle Club, and I ended up giving all but these two to the club. And then eventually, when they got a clubhouse there in North Carolina, last time I went out there and went to a party at the house, they had all I'm like, oh, there's the one I got in Ecuador, there's the one I got in Panama, there's the one I got in Las Vegas.
Nice.
So they make perfect decorations for a biker
They
clubhouse.
do. That's kind of real fitting. That you would walk in
Yeah,
and expect to see that.
yeah,
Probably
totally.
not walk into someone's house for a light evening social party, and hey, we're going over to
Yeah,
Mike's house, and like,
yeah.
whoa,
I
okay,
I actually considered, I was thinking about, oh, if I under the right circumstances and legal circumstances, if I come across one, a real one, it might make an interesting story. And I actually had First Battalion Seventh Group chaplain who was also a skull collector, and for him it had to do with some specific saint. And I don't remember which saint, but he asked, and I said, "Oh, I collect skulls as well." And he said, "You don't have a real one, do you?" I said, "No." And he goes, "Because that's sacrilegious, right?" And he went on this whole thing about how keeping human remains kind of for the purpose of display, like that's not. And I'm like, wow, I never really thought of it that way before. I thought of it as more of as an educational item, being that I'm
yeah.
in medicine. But now that you say that, no, I will never own a real one. So
Yeah, I mean, I think most people probably would think of it that way as being like kind of sacrilegious, unless you did have it for, I guess, some scientific medicinal reason. But then even then, it probably would not be in your house. It would be
yeah,
in a
yeah.
lab somewhere, right? No, interesting. And you could have got away with 2 more. That you could have put one underneath the flight helmet and one underneath the ACH, right? That would have been pretty cool. You could have kept a couple more. But
Yeah, I could have, but it's so the thing is though, and it is if you get like the skull that's wearing the beret is larger. Like if that were a real person, that would be like a size 10 head.
mm,
Like it's gigantic. In order to put headgear on a skull, it has to be so much larger than normal.
right, yeah,
So
because it's obviously the skull is much smaller. Yeah,
yeah.
makes perfect sense. But interesting. All right, so we've talked skulls, we've talked all kind of stuff. Rob's hitting up all the socials, getting up there. I do want to highlight our sponsors. Veteran Outdoors, Commodity Outdoor Development Group, Enlist 9 Fight Company, and BlueHarm.com, Gear for Grunts, and Alpha Elite Performance. Sorry, man, but they are a sponsor. I know, kind of a competitor to you, but so a lot of sponsors wanted to give a big shout out to them. and all that they're doing. So let's get into it. Speaking of performance and that kind of stuff, I mentioned at the top of the hour, before we get into some topics, I want to kind of bring our listeners and viewers up to speed on what Dr. Mike is up to. I mean, they've seen you on Hunting for Hitler. They've seen you on a number of different outlets and things you've been doing over the years. Of course, you've been, the most popular and famous thing, obviously, if you've guest hosted on his show a number of times.
Absolutely.
Usually in Mesquite Creek Outfitters, it seems like we're always there. But what have you been up to lately? Because you have not been sitting idle outside of your normal full-time job.
No. So, of course, during COVID, I talked about this last time I was on. During COVID, I launched the Graybeard Performance supplement line at graybeardperformance.com. So my line of supplements, jiu-jitsu fight gear, rash guards, hoping to eventually that site will branch out and being an entire life and lifestyle brand for dudes over 40 who still want to kick ass. And then as an accompaniment to the website, to my branding for Graybeard Performance, I wrote a book during COVID, and the title of the book is Honed: Finding Your Edge as a Man Over 40. And it's cleared hot now. It's in the pipeline, and the release date is scheduled on Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, and other online book outlets near you for August 24th.
Okay, awesome. And I know we're going to be having you back in August because we're going to target that specifically to talk about that. So there's definitely a thread there, right? Over 40.
Yeah,
right?
something I know quite well.
Yes.
Something I've known for 15 years now. So
I was going to say, are you going to kick up another one like over 50, or is it 40 and above going to kind of cover it, you think? Or are you going to do...
I think this one's going to cover it because I actually I talk about 40s, 50s, and 60s in the book. And if I get to 60... when I get to 60, if I notice like a radical change, that'll be 5 years from now. If I notice like a radical change in my approach, then I would probably come and do a sequel to the book. Probably more likely than that at some point in the next year or two is I'm going to do a sequel to the book that deals a little bit more with mental health, because that's something I didn't dive into in depth. Two things that I had slated that I wanted to talk about in the book that I didn't. There is a chapter where I talk about the mental aspect of it and what I call the use it or lose it when it comes to your brain, but I didn't specifically talk about a lot of in-depth mental health stuff and mental wellness stuff. And I had meant to, and as the book was finishing itself, it just didn't quite. It wasn't going to fit in. Kind of the rhyme and meter of that chapter just wasn't going to fit in. And then another chapter of the book that I wrote and got left out again, just because it would have been kind of such a stark contrast to the rest of the book, was I had a chapter on sexual health, sexual performance as we age. And I just thought it was it was a little bit too like, oh, I was reading one book and then, whoa, now I'm reading a totally different book. So I think I might take what I have from those two chapters and expand those into a completely separate book, kind of on holistic wellness, mental aspect of it, sexual performance, sexual lifestyle as we age, and put that out in a couple years.
Interesting. So the sexual performance part of the chapter just wasn't big enough? Is that it?
No, it wasn't. It was not a size issue. That's not an area where I had, and it certainly lasted long enough while you were reading it. Those were not issues. It just wasn't going to fit. It just
wasn't going to fit. Yeah,
it just wasn't. It wasn't going to fit.
I was trying to make a joke there, and it went better than I thought because we just kept going on it.
Completely unintended.
Yes.
But it worked.
But no, interesting. I'd like to talk with you sometime, not tonight in the show, but offline, about the mental health stuff. I have some. If you're interested, as any good retired first sergeant, I have nothing but unsolicited advice and opinion to give. But I have some perspective on it as myself, just a couple years younger than you, definitely over the 50 mark, on some of that you may correlate, say, yep, I'm with you, or I never thought about. I don't know, just some things. It's some things I've been thinking about lately, or I've thought about over the years. But anyways, interesting. So you got the books coming out. We're definitely going to have you back on to talk about that. How is the supplement business going? And what have you changed over? So you wrote this during COVID. What else have you found? I mean, I won't say this is a change. This is a new thing you took on. But what else have you saw that you've changed yourself, either in how you've interacted with people, what you've done on your socials, or what directions you've changed in life that you felt you've done over the last year? Just curious.
Since December, I cleaned up my diet quite a bit, because during COVID, my diet had basically become a dumpster. Basically we were using the oh we are using excuses like, okay, we can't do HEB pickup anymore, and they're low stocked and everything, but we can call up Masfajitas and we can pick up from them as kind of an excuse to eat shitty. So, uh, and I was justifying that with the fact that, well, I'm still working out like a banshee, and I feel great, and my cardio is amazing, and my deadlift is awesome. So yeah, I'm healthy. There's no issues there. And you look, your change in the mirror as you put on weight is so subtle that you don't notice it. And the mirror is also subjective, right? You look at it and you really see what you want to see, right?
Right, right.
And I wasn't stepping on the scale. And then in December, I stepped on a scale and I weighed 197 pounds. I'm like, that can't be right. Not as good as I feel. That's impossible. I actually just finished a week long defensive tactics course with C4C with Chad Lyman and Jay Wadsworth, and kicking ass, 8 hour days on the mat, keeping up with everybody, getting my ass kicked by 8 different black belts, and I'm like, no, I feel amazing. There's no way I weigh that much, and I pulled out my older scale, stepped on it, and it confirmed it. I was
You're like,
197
dang,
pounds. I'm like,
I knew that scale had to be wrong. How could it not be
yeah,
wrong?
I was banking on it and it wasn't. And so I'm like, all right, it's diet. I know that it's diet. So I'm going to clean up my diet. And I didn't do anything radical. I didn't say, oh, I'm going to cut out. I didn't do as I have done in the past. I followed the advice that I lay out in the nutrition chapter in my book, which is, I watched my macros and made healthy choices. I mean, it really only boils down to those two things: watch your macros and make healthy choices. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what I did.
And that made the difference. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's the same. I kind of getting the same thing in the fact that I work out pretty regularly, 5 to 6 days a week on average. I pretty much just take one day off, and that's because I'm doing stuff at the church or whatever. But it's like, I got kind of brought it down to a level, and I felt like, okay, I'm good to go. I just keep that up and things. But I think just like your metabolism, in my opinion, and I'm not a doctor by any means or scientist, so I kind of curious in what your perspective is on this. I kind of feel like just like if you haven't worked out in a while, haven't really taken care of yourself, and then you really get into it, and you
Mm-hmm.
kickstart that metabolism, which
Mm-hmm.
hopefully you get into ketosis and you kick in overdrive and you start doing it, it starts burning everything off. At the same thing, I feel like that. Well, once you get doing that and that becomes the norm, and you're burning that same 1,000 to 1,500, 1,000 to 1,500 or so calories a day working out or doing whatever, and doing that your body almost gets used to that and says, okay, well, that you've plateaued. That's great. But
Mm-hmm.
now that I'm used to that, that's not necessarily being as effective as it used to be. That's kind of the way as I've watched myself in my workout routines over the last couple of years. It seems like it was like at first, man, it was like multiplying, making the difference, and then it was like, oh, this is the norm now. Okay, yeah, you're not getting as much benefit out of it. Like you either got to keep cranking it up more. It's almost like your body
Mm-hmm.
gets immune to it. Is that how you
Yeah,
see it?
there's a lot of physiological. I have a whole chapter on aging where I go through all the body systems, and I describe what the changes are. Why we have less muscle mass, why we lose bone density, why our endocrine system doesn't work out, why we might be making less insulin, and the insulin that we are making, the receptors are not as sensitive over time. The fact that there are less mitochondria, the powerhouse cell, the mitochondria, we have less as we're getting older, right? So our metabolism does shift. Things like cortisol goes up. Human growth hormone has been going down steadily since our 30s, and continues to go down. So testosterone, thyroid hormone, all these things, have a direct impact on how we make muscle, store fat, how we metabolize what we put in our body in the way of fuel. So these things are all different. Now that doesn't mean you can't still be in shape. It might be a little bit harder to
Mm-hmm.
to lose fat than it was when you were in your 30s, but you can still do that. You just have to be a little bit smarter about it and recognize, I could, as long as I worked out hard in my 30s, really all the way up until my late 30s, as long as I was busting my ass working out, I could eat absolute garbage, just absolute garbage, and it really didn't matter. And that's not true anymore. So
Right.
it's, I have to take a much more holistic approach to fitness than I could in my 20s and 30s and even in my early 40s.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned it. So my last few physicals at my doc, they've been, like he doesn't do. We just sit and talk most of the time. He's like, dude, you're on it. You're doing everything right. You're hitting all my
Hmm.
numbers are looking good, right? You always do your blood work and stuff. Last time we talked, he's like, and I was like, is there anything I could be doing better with? He's like, processed foods, stay away from them. And I'm like,
Hmm.
wow, I've never, my entire life, no one's ever talked to. I know you've heard about it, like on TV, like,
Yeah, can
but
box frozen, or somebody handed through your car window.
yeah,
It's
that's what he's
something you
like. He's like,
shouldn't be eating. Yep.
processed foods are what's killing you. Like
Yep.
that's what's gonna bring that brings life to end more faster than anything else. And I'm like, wow, okay, I'm definitely getting old. When that's pretty much the only advice my doc can give me is just. No, we didn't talk about what I eat. We didn't talk about any of that stuff. And he was telling me, man, your numbers look good. You're in good shape. You're doing all the right things, but just stay away from that.
Yeah, because processed foods have the unholy trinity of what's bad for you. They're high in salt, high in bad fat, and high in carbohydrates that have a high glycemic index. Okay, as opposed to, if I eat, quinoa or something like that, something with or brown rice. These are low glycemic index foods. Pasta, white rice, bread. These are high glycemic index foods. So I get an insulin spike
Right.
when I eat those. And what does insulin do? It's a storage hormone.
Right.
So you store stuff.
Right, which is, yes, it gives you a short burst of energy, right? Or it gives you
Hmm.
the ability to burn more before and all that stuff, which is why I was telling someone this the other day. I'm like, they talk about all these diets, right? South Beach keto, blah blah blah. I'm like, oh, you mean all the ones that followed after Atkins when everyone thought Atkins was crazy? I'm like, because I tell people, like, that's all these are. They're all high protein, low carbs, which was what Atkins was doing in the 90s and early 2000s, and everyone's like, oh, that's the bull BS diet that just had let you eat chicken wings and steak, right? But they were onto something, and
Hmm.
pretty much that I've seen, all the diets now pretty much follow that same, in varying degrees, the same concept of just getting ketosis, letting not really burning the fat, not just burning sugars and carbs before it gets to
Hmm.
burning fat. But yeah,
Uh, Absolutely true. And the thing that I emphasize, and I've had done episodes on my podcast on ketogenic diets, and I've been on a ketogenic diet in the past, and yeah, it worked for me for a certain period of time. And even now, when I'm working out, I can tell I'm not like eliminating carbs. I'm making smart choices in the carbs that I get. But I know if I go out and I mountain bike for an hour and a half, I'll come back and I'll piss on a keto strip, and sure enough, I've got ketones. I burned. I was at a fat burning threshold.
right,
I didn't bump it up into my higher heart rate. I wasn't getting into my aerobic anaerobic threshold at all. I was down in the fat burning zone the whole time. So I expect that. But what I tell people is, make if you're making smart choices, because people are like, I don't want to count calories, I don't want to count macros. All right, then just make smart choices in your protein. Okay, so that's not ribeye steaks and bacon, right? That's lean chicken breast, lean turkey, and good fish, right?
right,
That's where you're going to get your good animal protein. Make good choices in your carbs. So brown rice, quinoa, a pear, a sweet potato, a banana. Stay away if it's white or processed, or it's bread, pasta. Certainly French fries and potatoes, things like that. Stay away from those.
all the things that
Uh,
Americans love, right? All
all the
the
things that Americans
breads,
love,
pastas,
right?
fries,
Yeah,
yes,
all the things that you can get in a drive-through,
right,
and then healthy fat choices. Get legumes, tree nuts, fish oil, coconut oil. The coconut oil, I guess, with some people is falling out of favor now. Stay away from butter and lard. That fatty ribeye steak that tastes oh so good. These are not healthy
it's
sources
all
of
about the
fat.
marbling.
Yep.
Right,
Yeah.
but that's when
They are
people
go.
go. That's where people go. Either I'm going to enjoy myself, or I'm going to, not enjoy myself. So it's a way to find it. But yeah, it's about
I don't.
balance, right?
When I have a steak, it is worth it. And I don't get tired of having steak. I go to Eddie V's and I have a rare bone-in ribeye, and I enjoy every moment of that meal. Because I'm not doing it all the time.
Right,
So,
right.
but when I go for barbecue here locally, I get turkey breast.
I was gonna
I
say,
get
are
turkey.
you getting pork belly and pulled pork
No,
and brisket, or not?
no,
Okay,
I get, so I'll go out and eat barbecue, and I get sliced turkey breast, coleslaw, and beans. I avoid the cornbread. I avoid the potato salad. I love potato salad, but I'll avoid that. Because those are actually three pretty healthy things. I mean, coleslaw is not great, but there's a lot of fiber in it.
Right.
Uh, and I don't eat a lot of the coleslaw. So, mostly I'm getting a lot of protein and fiber from the beans and from the lean turkey breast, which also is low. Recently I saw some literature put out from a couple of neurologists who are pushing a vegan diet, and they brought up the fact that it's not just fat in the meat, like it's not just the fat in a ribeye steak. The individual cells of animal proteins, individual cells of a that make up the musculature of a swine, bovine, whatever it might be, have fat in them, and that's true. And you even see it in chicken. So what I took the time to look up what kind of the cholesterol load is in all these different meats. And if you're sticking to things like turkey, skinless chicken breast, and salmon, you're doing pretty good.
So what about if you take chicken but you wrap it in bacon and then you throw it on a grill? Is that kind of bad?
It's
that kind of
so
counters?
incredibly delicious, but you're kind of defeating the purpose.
Yes,
I have
that's
to say.
one of my favorites is chicken
Yeah.
wrapped in bacon and
Yeah.
grilled. But yeah, all right. Okay, so we are over halfway in. We have covered a number of topics, and we covered a lot of men's health and just overall, not men's, all health. And hey, Rob, don't be banging on my pork rinds. Love my hot and spicy pork rinds. That's another Atkins leftover I have from there. But who doesn't like fried pork skin?
Delicious.
But let's talk about, speaking of health, let's talk about COVID.
Yeah, let's.
We got
let's
alpha,
talk about
beta,
COVID.
gamma, delta. There's some lambdas. There's, I guess we're just
Yeah.
gonna go through the whole Greek alphabet. I'm not sure when this is gonna end, but when last time you were on, we were talking a lot about it. I think it was the last time, and it was kind of we were. And was it last time? Was that last spring? Was that the last time we've had you? We've had you on. Since
No,
then.
it can't be that long
No,
ago.
we've had you on since then, but we did have
Yeah.
you on. I want to say April or May of last year, not too long after when we were
Yeah.
still trying to figure everything out
Mhm.
and all that stuff, and it was really starting to become a hot topic. But obviously it's been well over a year since we're a year and a half in. We've learned a lot, I think, but at the same time. We probably have learned what things that we heard before were probably BS. And if anything, in my opinion, the way things have been handled, discussed, and put out, it's made, if anything, this last year and a half, and we kind of saw it last summer, in my opinion, has made people doubt the science community, the medical community,
Yeah.
and national and world health-based organizations
Mhm.
looked at with a lot of freaking skepticism, which no one ever thought about doing before.
Yeah, it's and it's unfortunate. So, if you look at the messaging a year ago, and somebody just put up a comparison of messaging from a year ago to messaging today. There's several of them. There's one that's a video of Fauci basically contradicting himself.
Yeah,
There's another
there's
one
a
that's
lot of
headline.
that. There's a lot of
Yeah, there's headlines side by side from a year ago and from now that contradict each other. But it's a year ago. We didn't know what we didn't know. A lot of these were based on the science at hand. Were good faith. I honestly feel were good faith. I almost said investments, but measures, shall we say? So, masking was a reasonable measure. Social distancing was a reasonable measure given what we knew. And I battled the people that said, "Oh, the virus particle is this size and the mask." Well, it doesn't matter because it's droplet spread, right? Since that time, we did all, and none of those things seem to make an impact. Even when you account for, do a multivariate analysis, it looks like those things didn't necessarily help. And there's conflicting studies out there, and that's 2020 and 2021 have been the era of conflicting studies, right? Because everybody has an agenda nowadays.
they're like polls. These studies.
Yeah, it's people are going into this with preconceived notions, and it's coming out a certain way, right? And we've seen this with medications, with vaccines, with everything else. I still maintain that when I advocated, I did a podcast episode called "Just Wear the Damn Mask," and I was right, and I'll go to my grave saying I was right for doing so based on the knowledge that we had at the time. Them coming around and talking about doing all that again because of this Delta variant. Now, so let's talk about the Delta variant. So it's more communicable, is my understanding, and so the communicability ratio uh, for standard COVID, shall we say. So the, regular vanilla COVID is like 2.5. As you can expect that if you get it, you're probably going to transmit that to somewhere, two people or three people, an average of 2.5 people. That was the communicability ratio. The Delta variant, it's supposedly a little higher, but it's not any more dangerous. So it's not supposed to hospitalize people at an increased rate. It's not supposed to kill people at an increased rate. So it's just a little bit more communicable.
So let me pause you right there and ask:
Yep.
is it not as dangerous because there's a lot more Americans with antibodies and they've gotten shots, or do you think
That
we just don't know?
that's a multivariate analysis that we don't
Because
have.
wasn't it the Delta variant is what that just swept through India from about March to
Yeah,
June?
but the all the data that's come out of India has been bad data because they were using a vaccine that is not any of the vaccines we're using in the US. It's a vaccine that's not even approved for not even being considered as being approved for use in the US. Um, Supposedly they submitted that to a peer reviewed journal as a study and it was rejected, and now they're backpedaling and they say, oh, they're still considering it, they're letting them make some revisions, but I think it was rejected. Just like there's also another hydroxychloroquine study has come out that's recently been rejected, that another one that supposedly showed that hydroxychloroquine worked, and a mutual friend of ours texted it to me, and I immediately read it and I said, okay, I can see three confounding variables in this, like just reading the abstract. And then I went back, and one of the article's authors even said, yeah, we've been rejected from peer review. And it's not a conspiracy theory, it's they have some legit problems with the study. So you have it coming from both sides. It's not just that not that things pushing a narrative for one way are getting rejected, they're getting rejected from both ways, which tells me that the system still works to some extent.
Right.
But a lot of that you don't get to see, and there are some garbage journals out there that are pay for play journals. uh, the Henry Ford study got
Like
published in
most
one of
gun
those.
magazines.
Yeah, like gun magazines or fitness magazines,
Yeah.
right? So Muscle and Fitness it's a weeder catalog. It's not necessarily about what works, right? And there are journals out there like that, and they just want to fill up their pages. I get 2 to 3 spam emails a day because of my LinkedIn, begging me to submit journal articles to all of these journals that are trying to just fill up their pages. And I know that they'll accept absolute shit. And I could pad my resume submitting crap to these shitty journals. I'm just not going to do it.
Right.
Um, but the Delta variant is the new stick that they're beating us over the head with, and the new carrot is they want to now, I guess, offer people money to get vaccinated.
Well, that was
And
that was the thing today. But I mean, it seems to me the carrot is just still saying get the shot, get the shot, get the shot. Right. But
yeah.
what concerns me is, I heard Walensky from the CDC say yesterday, I think, or so, that or somebody, or I think it was her, said
Mm-hmm.
it that wow, we never saw this coming. We had no idea. And I'm like, I have a number of people I work with that are from India and have families over there, and we've been dealing with that since from a lot of guys and girls that work for me, report to me, and everything, since March, April, right?
Mm-hmm.
It wreaked havoc over their families, which of course stresses them out, and they're you can see it when you talk to them and you're working with them and
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and it's because their families were just falling ill left and right, and a number of them dying, and it was like,
Mm-hmm.
it was all because I remember I was reading some studies. Because of so many of them, I was talking to a number. I always talk to my folks like, "How's your family doing over there?" So on and so forth. And
Mm-hmm.
there was the reports that came out in January, February. It's like, hey, India may have hit herd immunity. Like they've beaten this. A country that's very dirty, that has not
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have great hygiene standards. I was just there. I was there essentially just months before this whole thing broke out. At least broke out in China, and it's just like they may have hit it, like everything's back to normal in India and all that stuff, and it's like, wow, they got around the curve, and it's like they're an example to herd them for herd immunity and everything else, and then all of a sudden they went 180 degrees and went right into the ground. And this, I'm assuming it's a Delta variant that hit them, because
Mm-hmm.
I know that my guys I was talking to were like, yeah, this is spreading faster than anything. It is just running. It went from nothing to 30-40% of a town, village, whatever, white, like totally sick.
Mm-hmm.
So I sit there when I hear officials in the States go, well, we had no idea. We never saw this coming and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, we've been watching it happening on the world stage all over,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
it just, That gives
Well,
me
it's like
pause.
see the selective reporting of the news and what's going on in other countries is concerning because it's like they're only reporting it as it furthers a narrative, And I hate even saying shit like that because it sounds like I'm feeding into these crazy conspiracy theories, but we've just seen it's true over time. Like they didn't want to when Italy was getting hammered
At the start of this, yeah, yeah,
at
yeah.
the start of this, right? And it was very obvious. A few things were very obvious. Is um, Italy has something of an obesity problem, not as bad as the U.S., but they do have something
That
of an
damn
obesity problem.
pasta. That damn
Yeah,
pasta doing
yeah.
them in.
They got a lot of smokers. Okay, they
Have a much older generation too. They had a lot of,
older.
yeah.
Okay, population density. And then, there was a lot of panic over their survivability. Like, so their death rate was just like off the chart. And they're like, oh, this is going to be the death rate
remember the
around the
pictures
world.
and the videos of the military trucks just lined up full of
Yeah.
there. Yeah, yeah.
And the first thing I did is I did a deep dive when I found out that Italy had fewer ventilators and ICU beds per capita than any other European country, right? Any other European country. I'm like, oh, they're just the most ill-equipped to handle this. They don't have the ICU beds, they don't have the ventilators, which means they don't. And it doesn't matter if you don't. That means you don't have the respiratory technicians and the pulmonologists as well. So you don't have the subspecialists to take care of that. I'm not talking about just how many people are on ventilators. I'm talking about people who are specifically trained to deal with these respiratory disasters. So I'm like, that's the outlier. If you do the multivariate analysis, that's the outlier that's causing their huge death rate, right? And so, and everybody kept trying to translate their death rate to what it was going to be like in the U.S. And literally, I don't how many. What do you know? What the U.S. death toll is currently? I don't know. I don't look at it. I was looking
No,
at it daily at one point,
no.
and I don't know.
I'm sure Rob will tell us any second. He is
Yeah.
telling us
So
the median age in Italy is 47.3, median age in the U.S. 38.1.
yeah.
That's a day. He's a damn good unpaid producer. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah,
I can
I'm sure
I can look on Worldview real quick and tell me what the U.S. death toll is, but I had physicians saying, "All right, I've done the numbers, and we're gonna 20 million dead." I had a physician say this: 20 million dead. All of us physicians are going to get it. That's a foregone conclusion, and half of us will die. I'm like, wow, you don't really know how to bring down a room. Like you're telling your colleagues,
yeah.
half of us will die.
50, half of you in this room, yeah. By the way, the U.S. COVID deaths are 612,000.
612,000, right? Yeah. So we haven't, 612,000. We haven't reached a million. And this guy was predicting 20 million.
Right.
And half of all U.S. And he was basing these off the Italy numbers. And I'm like, we're never going to even remotely approach the Italy numbers. And again, this was somebody whose politics leaned to the left. And I said, what you don't want to say, the thing you don't want to single out as a factor and talk about is that Italy has socialized healthcare and it's a fucking disaster.
Yep. Yeah.
Right. And you don't want to talk about
Remember the
that.
death panels? They were picking when they started getting low on oxygen.
They were 100% choosing who was going to get a ventilator and who wasn't.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And a big thing they hit India over this spring was that they were running out of oxygen. Either that or they were hoarding it. But there were people that were dying in the hallways of hospitals. They could not get them oxygen. So Rob is saying we're at 34.8 million cases. World deaths at 4.19 million. So
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this Delta thing, I mean, as we see this happen, I mean, is the mask? You talked about which you said before, and you stand by. I mean, there was all talks about the particles going through the mask or bandanas because they were just pretty much telling people to wear anything, which I think was the start of the American populace going, this is all bullshit. If you can tell me I can put a freaking 99-cent bandana on and it's good. I think that's when the American people started getting a little skeptical.
Yeah, well, and see that. So that's the messaging was just wrong from the beginning, right?
Right.
It's don't buy the mask, and then coming out later and say, well, I said that because I didn't want them to run and buy the masks, and we wouldn't have had them. Okay, maybe I can forgive that, And so the only thing that would have ever kept you from receiving it was the N95, right? The standard face mask is what would keep you from transmitting it. My mask wasn't to protect me; it's to protect you. The neck gaiters were always a bad idea because all it does is funnel all your shit out
Right.
and basically aerosolize it into a fucking cloud around you. So that was always a bad idea. So they should have clamped down on that early and said, no, you guys, you're not doing it right. And they didn't, right? Because it's, words have been thrown around like, oh, it's all, theater or whatever. Let me ask you this: Are you, if you're comfortable answering, are you vaccinated?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
I'll say that.
I am too, and I'm going to say this for the listeners. Okay, I'm vaccinated. I got the Moderna vaccine. Um, about a week and a half ago, I went to jujitsu and I rolled with two people, 6-minute rolls, sweating all over each other, breathing in each other's face. Both of them the next day weren't feeling so good, went and got checked and were COVID positive. Okay. I'm fine. I did not, and another guy in my class around my age, also vaccinated. He rolled with the same two individuals. Uh, neither one of us COVID positive. Now,
So let me ask you: Did you get tested, or you just have showed no symptoms?
showed no symptoms. So it doesn't matter. So it essentially doesn't matter.
Well, you could have the virus,
I could,
and
but
you could be spreading it. Correct? Because it's not the vaccine doesn't keep you from getting it; it keeps your symptoms down, which is why I call it a symptom.
According to
shot.
the Israeli study, it does. According to the Israeli study, it does, with some exceptions. The number of individuals who've gotten it, so it reduces everything. So your chances of getting it are lower. Then if you do get it, your your symptoms
let me
are
ask
better.
you this. Let me ask
and
you
then
this.
there's also less viral shedding.
So I call it. I don't call it a vaccine because I don't consider it vaccines like normal like flu vaccines and stuff. It's a symptom shot. It is, and the way they've been putting it out. Maybe this is bad messaging too, right? In the fact they say
bad messaging.
It lets you. It lessens the chance. You aren't not going to have as many people going to hospital, not people going to die, and all that stuff. Yeah. So, if just like when the people they say a third of the country think are asymptomatic, which I think I was because I was around two people in my household that had it last year, and I showed nothing, and I was actually at a household in Texas that had it that I showed nothing out of. So I think I was asymptomatic. However, those people that were never got tested, so that's why they kind of came up that number. Said we think about a third probably are asymptomatic, never knew they had it, so that's that many more. Right. So, just like if you had a vaccine or a shot, should I say, that kept you from, just like you just had, you may have it right now. It just all these symptoms are suppressed, right? You're not getting anything. If you have it right now, let me ask you, and you're out breathing, could you not have the ability to spread it? You're completely asymptomatic to it.
That's another argument that they've never made very well. Is they've never shown any good data on the asymptomatic spread. Right. That's something that they've beat us over the head with.
So they tested in New York last April, May. They picked 7 or 8 sites around the state when New York was getting ravaged. One of the sites it was in a parking lot of a huge grocery store right near my house. And they were out there and they're like, we're just sampling, testing people and stuff. That's part of that study, at least for the state of New York, they came up with that 1/3 number because of the people they tested, they said, have you showed any symptoms? They were like, no. And a third of those people came back as positive.
They came back as positive, but they never showed that any of those people were transmissible.
Can people have it and never be transmissible?
Theoretically you could.
I mean, because last year it was like, hey, even if you're asymptomatic, you still got to wear a mask because you could still be spreading it. And then this year they were like, oh no, if you've had a shot or if you've had a shot, then there's no way you can spread it. That's why you can go without a mask, which is what the current, pretty much the current policy still is.
If you have a normal functioning immune system, because this was some data that I heard brought up today, is they were talking about viral load in the nasopharynx and oropharynx, right? When it came specifically to the Delta variant, right? So here's the deal: is if I have a high viral load, then there's also debate about whether that viral load is even transmissible, right? Just because it's there doesn't mean it's transmissible in its current state, right? But let's, for the sake of argument, say that it is. Let's say if I have a high viral load in my nasopharynx and oropharynx, that it is transmissible. We'll just give them that because I'm not an epidemiologist, and I'm not going to debate that. Shapiro was talking about it today. If I have that going on, So my body's defense against that is to produce what's called IgA. IgA is in your snot. So what does that mean? Runny nose, cough, sneezing, right? So theoretically, let's put them both together now.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't have the reaction, which is the runny nose, cough, sneezing, that's probably because I don't have a viral load. And if I don't have a viral load, then I'm not transmissible.
But a viral load implying that you have enough of it in you that you essentially get, because it takes a lot. There was this misconception, I think, through how people like, if one little droplet gets in you, that's it, you're done, right? People didn't realize it took like tens of thousands, if not millions of the, of it to get in you to maybe like take seat, right? And actually do it. So when you say viral load, is that what you mean? Like enough of it in density that.
Yeah. So it's going to, how much viral load somebody is going to be susceptible depends on the individual, the climate around them. So like, cause I'm going to release a viral load, right? If that's transmitted in a respiratory droplet for a distance of say 5 feet, cause we know 6 feet is safe, right? So a distance of 5 feet, how much of that is going to survive? What's the temperature between me and you? What's
Right.
the wind resistance between me and you? What's the humidity between me and you? And then how susceptible are you? How did you receive that? Did it just land on your lip? Or were you in mid inspiration and you got it deep and it went all the way to the back of your oropharynx, and you got it all? And then what is your individual immune system like? Did your IgA recognize the virus right away and take care of it? Right?
Right.
Probably not, because if it's something that you're completely naive to, but how did your body react? There's so many factors involved here. And, a lot of people are making, Fauci in particular is making a lot of blanket statements based on kind of cherry picking around the science.
Right. Because they haven't had enough time to know what the science really is. Is
that
a safe
statement? But I think at this point they have. And I think, now,
does it not support the narrative that they've been pushing for the last year?
That's the thing, is at this point, it's impossible not to convince the conspiracy theorists that they weren't right all along. It's impossible to fucking convince them that, because they've backpedaled everything. They've been complete hypocrites. Like, so you have to wear a mask to be on a plane unless you're a bunch of Democrats fleeing the state of Texas. Then you can do whatever you want.
Oh, no, you have to wear a mask if you're outside unless you've got a BLM sign. Right.
A Trump rally is a super spreader event,
right,
but a BLM rally is not a super spreader event.
Right.
January 6th, super spreader event. Democrats storming the Capitol, not a super spreader event. So the hypocrisy has been so wide ranging. All I got to do is put up my hands like this now, when I hear somebody with the conspiracy theories and the tinfoil hats, because I'm like, I got nothing. I can't defend this shit
because
anymore. I'm just going to look like an idiot.
Facts. You don't have any facts that even you believe in and go, yep, we've seen it, right? Because if we did, we would say, hey, if the rallies, if the campaign stops, and the Trump rallies and the BLM marches and the protests, they all turned into super spreaders, then you could say with validity and honesty and say, yes, when you get a bunch of people close proximity like that in pretty much any weather conditions, guess what? We see all these cases pop out. It is absolutely, but for someone to say blanket state, that's a super spreader event. Well, how many, remember, oh, it's at schools. Well, how many sick kids are we seeing coming out of schools? And now we're masking
almost
them
none.
Up. Right.
Almost none.
And now you have, now you back to, K through 12, back CDC saying mask them all back up. Right. And
here's a concerning statistic that I heard on Shapiro today, that 40% of New York City teachers have refused the vaccine because they know as long as they refuse the vaccine, they don't have to go back to work.
That goes along with what I heard of over 53 or 58%, I think, of New York City's employees have not gotten the vaccine. Sanitation workers, office workers, everything like that. It's not a red-blue thing. It's not a Trump hat.
These aren't right wingers. These aren't right wingers in their MAGA hats going on QAnon, folks.
No, it's not. But at the same time, I was talking to one of our teachers in the high school the other day, a few weeks ago, and she was telling me, because I was like, "What is it like?" 'Cause, I deal with Boy Scouts, and I was doing a Zoom session. We've been doing Zooms all the time, and I was doing a Zoom session a few weeks ago with our Boy Scouts, getting them ready for summer camp, and it was like pulling teeth. I mean, these are boys that run motor mouth, and they talk to me all the time, and I'm walking them through getting ready for summer camp, and I'm like, any questions, any this, and they stared at me. I'm like, now I know what your teachers feel like, because I talked to this teacher who was teaching summer school, and she
Mm-hmm.
was like, this year was the worst. Like, she goes, it started where I had people on. She goes, by the midway of the year, they didn't even turn their cameras on. And she goes, I
Mm-hmm.
swore I heard them snoring sometime. And she goes, when
Mm-hmm.
they did come on, or when what they did in our school was 2 days a week, they were half the class, A through M was in the classroom, and the other half was
Mm-hmm.
remote, and vice versa. She goes, they would come and just use kids that used to run at the mouth, just sit in front of me in the classroom, just put their head down. She goes, the depression is rampant. She goes,
Yeah.
they just had, there's no social interaction. They're, even though some of their friends are there, not all, they don't even care about their, she goes, in the past, I wanted them to, she goes, I'd be like, just shut up with all you just shut up. She goes, now, she goes, I was practically begging them to talk and just be interactive. Not even, she goes, just with me, like with each other. She goes, you could just saw it every day, every class.
Yeah.
And so we see that, and that's one little school up here in upstate New York, one high
Yeah.
school, and you multiply that times the number of schools going across, and then you also look at the numbers of kids in K through 12 that were spreaders and the number of cases that came out of school, and you sit there and go, how can you dare look anyone in the eye and be a educated and supposedly smart, doctor, scientist, Walensky's not, right, whatever she is, and sit there and tell people, yes, mask them all back up. It's worth risking the depression, the suicide, and everything else,
Which we know we're having. Right?
which is undisputed, right?
Yeah.
Those numbers are on a point, and no one's
Right.
arguing those, and they're measurable, they're tangible.
So I'm going to give everybody, this is going to be the inflammatory, potentially taken out of context soundbite that will get played again and again and again. And it will come back to haunt me like 10 years from now. I am so fucking tired of this shit. So I played nice, right? I did real research. I advocated for masks. I advocated for social distancing. I even advocated to some degree for the early portion of the lockdowns, right? That, hey, because we don't know what we don't know. I advocated for all of that because I didn't want to see the hospitals get overloaded, because my big concern was not necessarily how many people die of COVID, but when the ICU fills up and people in, diabetic coma, heart attack, stroke, those people are dying across the street because the ICU is filled up, right? I played nice with all of that, and I got vaccinated, and I got my family vaccinated. But I am at such a fuck it, I don't care point anymore. I don't want to wear a mask. I'm not going to fucking lock down. I don't want to play these stupid fucking games. And if this is as bad, let's say it's as bad as they are all saying it is, guess what? Fuck it. This is the cataclysmic event of a fucking millennia that we just need. And okay, it wipes out half the human population. Okay, what's the meme? Okay, it is what it is. All right, we just need to accept that this is our meteor shower. This is our cataclysmic event, because otherwise we're just going to draw this out. We can't continue as a species like this. We're going to find a whole new set of problems. So maybe everybody who is susceptible to die of this, I don't want to see anybody die, but at this point, fuck it. We can't go on like this. We cannot be scared of this virus.
It's a natural purge. Mother Nature is running her own
from now
purge.
until the end of whenever, right? We survived swine flu. We survived all this other shit.
Bird flu.
This bird flu.
AIDS.
You name it. We've fucking gotten through it. So it just is what it is. I'm not fucking, I got to fly next week. I'm going to wear a mask to fly. Okay. It is what it is. Okay. That's a business. Okay. I have to wear shoes and a shirt when I go in there too. If I go to a business and I have to wear a mask, I wear a mask to go. I keep one of my Jeep for just that reason. I will wear one to go into your business. Okay. I'm fine with that. I'm not wearing it outside my daily life, period. Okay. I've never worn one to drive. I don't wear one to the gym.
You don't wear one by yourself in a car? Like
I don't wear one in the car. I'm not doing that, but if a business mandates it, that's their business. And I said, I gotta wear shoes and a shirt.
They're private business. They can do that, right?
Yeah.
That's up to them.
Yeah. And I'm not going to boycott them because of that.
And you can decide whether to partake or not in that business.
Yeah. They don't want me cussing. They don't want me going in there with a half a can of Copenhagen in my lip and spitting on the floor either. So I'm not going to do that. Although I don't dip anymore, so it doesn't matter. Right. I respect their business, and if their business, their rules. It's like, now if my neighbor invites me over and says, hey, I'd like you to wear a mask, I'm like, why don't we just hang out on the porch then?
Yeah.
I I typically don't like anybody that much to go over to their house anyway. But
And
I'm just not.
Toby's not going to ask you to wear a mask, so you know you're good there.
Yeah, Toby's not gonna. None of my friends are gonna ask me to wear a mask anyway, right? So
no, I'm and it's another thing that gets me on this is this whole mandate, right? So we've got the president today coming out tonight. I think he said it right that they're going to mandate all federal workers and contractors, like they're talking about doing it at DOD. He's asking the Pentagon to look at it for all soldiers, and all federal workers. We have the city of New York. The New York City has put it out. Governor Cuomo has put it out for state employees and all that stuff. Yet they're asking them to get a shot that is still not actually fully approved by the FDA. Number one. I'm going to go 2 points here. Let me go there.
Okay, go ahead.
One, not been totally approved, and two, no consideration to people that he either are racked full of antibodies, because I've had a number of people I know around me that got the virus, whose doctors are telling them, don't get you don't need to get a shot. You're racked full of antibodies.
And that's reasonable.
Right. And there's nothing to that, right? There's no consideration of that. So that's the second thing. I know we're getting a lot of topics. The third one is, how has HIPAA just been thrown the hell out the window for all this? And when are those lawsuits going to start piling in? When you start making people show cards and show what shots they got and everything else that you signed all those freaking HIPAA statements for?
There's a precedence for HIPAA getting around that's not HIPAA.
That's not a HIPAA violation for all that.
Yeah, there's a precedence
for you. Show me your papers for you to come into this concept.
I don't like it either, but I'm saying it's not the way that there is a legal way to come at that, but it's not through HIPAA.
Okay, so that was the last one. So I gave you that. That was the easiest one to answer. So talk to me about the antibodies and talk to me about how governments can, because right now, just so you know, just to kind of give you some context, the state of New York, Governor Cuomo has said all students that come back to the school in the fall, to SUNY schools, state schools, will have to have the shot before they come back once it is approved. Like they put that caveat. You can't. It's not saying you have to have it now. So that makes me think. So
once it goes from emergency approval, which is where it is now, into full approval,
then the governor, because they're state schools, he's the governor, is saying to go to dorm and to go to classes.
They can do that. I mean, my son to go to college had to have meningococcal vaccine.
Right. But that's an approved vaccine. I got you. I'm with you, right? Kids in schools today in K through 12 have to have shots and vaccines, right? I got that. But I'm wondering how the federal government, certain state and city governments can mandate their employees, and more so the unions to the employees, get a shot that isn't been 100% approved yet. And keep their job.
That's and there's a legal argument against that. So I want to couch that really quick. So it's emergency approval. Okay. It's not full approval. That is true. That is true. I am a stickler for accuracy when it comes to any argument. Okay. And the argument that I keep hearing from a lot of people, and this is a completely untrue argument, is if you use the word experimental, you've lost me, because that's completely untrue. Because this thing's been through phase 3 trials. Okay. It's not experimental. If you say, I'm not going to be forced to take an experimental vaccine, all you're telling me is you don't know what experimental means. Now, if you say it's not approved, you are correct. Okay. Right. But so one is a scientific definition. The other is a administrative definition, whether or not it is approved or not. Right. But it is not experimental. So the two big fallacies I keep hearing is it's experimental. No, it's not. It's been through phase 3 trial. In fact, it passed phase 3 trials with flying colors. Okay. I could go into 3 or 4 things that fallacies that I hear, but the two big ones are that, and it rewrites your DNA. And that's an affront to God.
So let's talk about Johnson & Johnson, Moderna. They are a little bit different than, or not Johnson, Moderna and Pfizer are different.
They're mRNA.
They modify mRNA. Is they modify your? Is that the right term? Modify your?
No,
mRNA,
they modify cellular response, but they don't actually modify your like what it does to you is not going to pass on to your offspring.
Okay, so how is that different than Johnson & Johnson in the fact that it does not do that, right? What does it do differently? If you can put it in layman's terms.
I'm going to tell you that I can't, because I would screw it up.
Okay.
Me trying to explain it at my level, I'll screw it up.
But the Johnson & Johnson, which I call the one and done, that one is a different. What I've heard from medical professionals and people in the know, and including friends that work at the CDC, Is that's the one that's, if you're going to get one, that's the one to get.
Well, that's the traditional one, right? So that's the one that's designed more as a traditional one, but it
Right.
also had more. I don't want to say adverse events. It had more side effects.
It has had a
So
few, but it
we
also
had some
was not
people with
always
Bell's palsy
right.
and stuff like that. So here's another thing that I want to bring up. Right? So, uh, there's a video floating around out there that shows a bunch of people that had bad outcomes from getting the vaccine. Okay. I don't want to prejudge people based solely on a video, but my impression of that video, just based on some very specific things that I'm seeing in that video, verbiage wise and demographic wise, is that this is not, it's not a good representation of a good number of people. So let me give you an example. So there's a restaurant that gets 5 complaints a month from fucking Karens who demand to see the manager, right? Is that a reflection on how good the restaurant is? Because there's 5 Karens that you just can't fucking please. No. Okay. So if you can find a handful of people who are hypersensitive and prone to, oh my God, I got this shot and now I can't feel my legs. If you can find those people and then you interview those people and you string all those together into a testimonial, it creates the illusion that there's this massive problem when there's not. Right. And I can tell you, having been in medicine as long as I have, conversion disorder is a real thing. Okay. And I have seen people who think they're getting a drug. I gave literally normal saline. I was flushing an IV, and somebody said the name of a drug while I was doing it. I wasn't even giving that drug. And this woman started freaking out saying, oh, I'm allergic to that. I'm having an allergic reaction. I can't breathe. And I'm like, that drug is not even in the room. Okay. You didn't get that drug. That drug's not even in the room. Well, whatever you gave me, I'm having an allergic reaction. So I literally drew up another 10 cc's of normal saline again and flushed her IV again. And she's like, oh, thank God. Okay. So conversion disorder is a real thing.
Right.
And I see it all the time. And some people have had, legit things, like, Bell's palsy, Guillain-Barré syndrome. These are all real things. But I've also seen a lot of things that, like, you can just tell from the story, you did not have a reaction to that vaccine.
Well, I mean, I got mine. I mean, I didn't have anything. I didn't have a sore arm. I didn't have nothing. I was waiting to the next day. I'm like, oh, this weekend's going to suck. I'm like, nope.
I had a second shot. I had a 3-hour time period where I felt like shit. I had a 3-hour time period where I felt like I had a really bad case of the
you had the
flu.
Moderna. I had the J&J.
Yeah.
And I was just, mine was one and done. And I was just like, no, it was fine. I didn't have a problem at all.
I went to sleep. I reclined on the couch, went to sleep. All right. I took Motrin and Tylenol, went to sleep, woke up, still felt a little bit wobbly, had dinner. By the time dinner was through my system, I felt fine.
Right. So obviously, just like the virus and how it affects people's bodies are made up of a lot of different things going on, and their immune system, this or that or whatever. Obviously, there's been talks of one sign I've heard from a number of people that they're supposedly their doctors told them was, for the Pfizer one especially, which there seemed to be a lot of negative reactions to the Pfizer, which is if you had a really bad reaction to the Pfizer, the second shot, it could be a very good sign that you had the virus sometime in the past.
Yeah, and that's true because you already had antibodies.
Right.
So your body basically saw the Pfizer shot and said, oh, shit, here it comes again. I recognize this. I'm going after it.
Is that, so there's some validity to that statement because I heard that from a number of people.
Yeah, I'll say there's definitely feasibility to that statement.
So the Johnson, the Pfizer and the Moderna are more the ones where are they faking the body or making the body think it had the virus, and rather than giving a live virus like we see some vaccines are, right? They're not actually giving it. Is it to make the body think, hey, this is what the virus looks like, this is how you defend it? Is that essentially what they're doing? To put it as simple as I could?
Yeah. So the way that I kind of like oversimplify it to talk to people is like, so if you've been punched in the face before, right, and you know what being punched in the face and you know to get out of the way. So the virus is coming to punch you in the face. So what the shot does is it doesn't punch you in the face. It's the boxing glove on the thing where you go like this and it just kind of comes out at you, but it doesn't really punch you in the face, right? It just kind of makes you go, whoa.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it does. So, but if you've been punched in the face before and I come at you with that boxing glove thing, you're going to go, oh shit, and get out of the way.
Right.
Right.
Which is why people can still get because that's why I say it's not like a real vaccine. You can still very well get it if your body does not duck out of the way. You can get punched in the face.
It depends on the individual.
Right.
It depends on the functioning of the individual immune system.
Right.
And there've been the cases of people that have been vaccinated getting it are rare, and they've shown a huge decrease in severity. So if I do get it,
side effects. Severity of side effects.
Oh, I say we're just kind of jumping back and forth between two things. Okay. So I was talking about like now that I've had the shot, if I get it.
Right. If you get it, even if you were to get it, your side effects are like we were talking earlier. You're almost like asymptomatic, or maybe it's very, very minimal. Like if you had some comorbidities, which would maybe if you didn't have it would put you in a hospital, you may have like the head cold for a couple of days or something. Like that.
My baseline health is given what it is and the fact that I've been vaccinated. If I get it, the odds of me having an oxygen requirement, or especially the odds of me having an ICU stay, are pretty small.
Right.
That just means my number was up.
Right. That's just odds, right? Walking down the street, something hit you. But these people that have the antibody, I guess that's part of the concern too, is if you have the antibodies, if you've had it, like I've say a number of people that have, and the doctor said do not get the shot. Is there potential? Do they foresee potential risk? And I'm asking this in the context of these mandates now of these employees of governments and federal, state, and local being told, and even private companies, you have to get a shot. We don't give a damn if you've had antibodies, if you ever had it. Is that putting people at risk? Do you think, in your opinion? Or is it making them super extra protected?
I don't think there's not data. So when people ask me, so my son had it and then got the shot. Okay. And when people ask me, all right, I've had it, should I get the shot? I tell them, well, okay, that's up to you. There's, enough people are in that category that, the downside is you're probably going to have probably some side effects with the first shot and then a little bit worse side effects with the second shot. Are you going to get like a flare up and go into the hospital, or, be at higher risk of Bell's palsy, Guillain-Barré, and a severe adverse reaction? No, there's no data to show that. So I always say at the end, it's up to you, but I can tell you if it were me, because we still don't know what we don't know, and we don't know how long immunity lasts, because there are cases. I don't know personally somebody who's had it twice. Okay. So you can get COVID twice. And there's not a lot of cases, but there are cases. So personally, if it was me, I would do it. But I think that's a decision each individual should make. And I don't think there's I don't think anybody has a strong enough argument to force somebody into that.
The problem, like I said at the start, they have screwed up the messaging on this, and the politicians and the media have made it so political that no one can even trust. I mean, no one would, prior to 2020, if the CDC put something out, or even the World Health Organization, people are like, holy shit, all right, this is like, there'd be no questioning of that, right? They were on point. The CDC.
I personally stopped trusting the CDC during Ebola.
Right. Okay. For people that were in the know,
I had stopped trusting them for a while,
right,
because the messaging on Ebola was terrible.
Right. And for people in the know and were close enough to that, I would have made, not everyone was really paying attention to that, but you're right. There was some of that. But for the most part, the general everyday American, who lots of people can't even name who the damn first president was, right, and stuff. But for those people, everyday Americans, they probably would have, the CDC puts it out. That's just part, partially government agency that's out there that's going after every virus, that's sending people in. They show up in white Tyvek suits and do all that kind of stuff. Now they talk, and it's like you're a talking point. You're talking head of the president, right? You're talking head of a party. I won't even say the president, the party, whatever party, right? I'm not going to believe you. You're in the NIH, but you were put there under this administration, that kind of stuff. I mean, one thing I think people have lost sight of is, and one thing I'll give him credit, one thing that, one of the few things that President Biden actually said that made sense and said it today, I listened to him, was that this thing, and I think it's the first time he's given credit to the Trump administration. He actually came out and admitted these shots, these vaccines were actually developed underneath the Trump administration. Mm-hmm. And now being still pushed and administered by the Biden administration. It was his way to, I think, probably one of the first times I could think of since he's been president, that he kind of reached across the aisle and said, hey, this is a joint bipartisan thing. It wasn't, we didn't develop, because remember, and he probably remembers that well, because when Trump was coming out with it, of course, there's enough snippets of him saying, I don't trust President Trump. I wouldn't trust his.
I don't think he remembers anything.
But he may not. But him.
I don't think he remembers what he had for breakfast.
Yeah,
today.
But him and Kamala both were saying, don't get it, don't trust it. Right. There's no way, right? Because President Trump was in charge. Like he was in the lab mixing that shit up, right?
Dude, and I had physicians copying and pasting the state, copied from a colleague, and they were posting this. I, as a practicing physician, will not accept a vaccine. Blah 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 blah. And there was a specific one. I think maybe it was Moderna that they were saying that they absolutely would not accept. And I had to call a couple of them out. I said, "Oh, you're a fucking anti-vaxxer now." Like, no. I'm like, no. Yeah, you are. You're an anti-vax. Like, this is all. You are regurgitating all the typical anti-vax talking points, okay? And you're only doing it because of who is in the White House,
right?
And that's bullshit. So you need to sack up and put your doctor hat back on, and trust. There's people working in these fucking labs who probably voted the way you did.
Yeah, that have worked there over administration after administration because they're just working, doing the job. They didn't get appointed by the president to be a scientist mixing.
And people, and I don't know if I talked about this because I know we've talked about the Operation Warp Speed before, but when people are like, I can't believe how it was rushed through. It's like, all right, well, let's talk about how it was rushed through. Okay. Because I know a little bit about how this works. So it works. Developing a vaccine is not unlike when you do an Institute for Surgical Research project of any kind. So you have these gates. So you write up a proposal, okay, and you submit it, and they go, okay, all right. So the next time we are going to meet to talk about new proposals is 4 weeks from now. So 4 weeks from now, a bunch of us are going to get into a room, and we're going to talk about this. And then we're going to email you back. And then they email you back and they go, well, so we had the following questions. So we want you to come in at our next meeting 4 weeks from now, and you're going to answer these questions. And you go in the room and you answer the questions. And they're like, okay, so what we'd like to, based on the answers to those questions, we'd like to see you resubmit this with a deadline of 2 weeks from now. And then 2 weeks after that, we'll meet and we'll get back to you again. Okay, so you do that. So vaccines are kind of similar. When you get to a certain point and you submit, and they're like, well, all of our people are doing their own thing and doing this and doing that. So we're not scheduled to have, we have the meetings on this the second Tuesday of every quarter. So the second Tuesday of every quarter, whenever, which is two months from now, we're going to meet and then we're going to get back to you. All they did is they compressed, anybody who's been in the military can appreciate this, right? Your paperwork goes to somebody's fucking desk and sits there for a week, and all it needed was, right. And then it goes to somebody else's fucking desk for 3 weeks and, right? So they did is they compressed.
Unless the battalion commander or sergeant major walks it through and says, do it, right? Which is what Warp Speed did. Yeah, we did talk about this before.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Warp Speed was you were clearing CIF with the sergeant major over your fucking shoulder. That's what Warp Speed was.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So shit got done. Shit got done the way it should get done all the time. And no, you assholes don't get to all get on planes and pad your expense account and stay in a hotel so you can do this 2-hour meeting. No, we're going to Zoom it. We're going to email out all the data, and we're going to Zoom it. And you guys are going to say yay or nay right now. And then we're going to move on. That's what Operation Warp Speed did. It cut out all the red tape and bullshit. It didn't cut out the science.
Right. But the reality is, and why some people are skeptical and stuff is, they know it's all about time. There wasn't enough time to do long-term studies and short-term studies and varying demographic studies, right? Like, middle-aged women may get clots. There's a higher percentage with this one, or it's kicking up this condition or something, right? Mm-hmm. But so obviously that is what still people. I think that's why I don't know what the numbers are. Rob could probably tell us. I think he said a little bit ago. There's like 51 or 53% of Americans have been vaccinated, have gotten the shot. I think is what I saw earlier from him. You know, that's still a big chunk of this country that is going no, for whatever reason. They had it and have antibodies. They're hearing some messaging that is could not be false. Maybe they do consider experimental. They feel that, hey, there just hasn't been enough time. I don't want to submit myself to it and think that it may pop up, it may not. I'd rather wait and say that we've tested it every possible angle and from every side that we could to know that it's 100% safe as can be. Which is ironic when I say that, because obviously Rob brought up earlier, aspirin, and other things like that have all kind of side effects, right? There's people that have gotten regular vaccines that have been totally proved that have really bad side effects that put them in the hospital.
Yeah,
right?
and they're rare.
They're rare, right?
They're rare.
They don't get coverage on CNN. That's the difference.
No, and it's
So Rob told me, we're 49.6%, so less than 50% has been vaccinated.
Yeah, it's I thought that number was higher. I don't know why I thought that number was higher. Canada is like, Toby's not here to defend Canada, but their numbers are like pathetic.
Yeah,
they're
they're getting AstraZeneca. They ain't even getting the good stuff. They're getting the one we haven't even given up.
That's what socialized healthcare gets you. But an argument that I get from anti-vaxxers all the time, that's, and granted, I mean, there's no denying it with the COVID vaccine, right? We're not going to know what the 5-year effect is until 5 years from now. We're not going to know what the 10-year effect is until 10 years from now. But when they talk about, but I cringe at those arguments because I still have to argue those same arguments for measles, mumps, rubella, and the smallpox vaccine, and polio vaccine.
Those, people can say those are what we've always known classically as your anti-vaxxers, right? They didn't even want any of those childhood immunizations.
But, so
like that.
The arguments that I get are, well, we don't have enough data. And I'm like, so you don't think 35 million just in the last 10 years alone, you don't think that's enough data? And they're like, where are you getting in that number from? I said, oh, simple. Between 3.7 and 3.8 million children are born in the U.S. every year. And even accounting for anti-vaxxers, let's say a significant number are not getting vaccines, 3.5 million children a year are getting one or more of those vaccines. So that means 35 million only in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So that's just since 2011. 35 million have gotten vaccines. And if you look at how many of Americans living today are vaxxed, even if it was only 50%, and now extrapolate that globally, so somebody who knows somebody who said they had a friend that had this reaction. So that's 1 against 35 million. I think my data is a little bit better than yours, Karen.
Right. Right. Well, that was like mine with the Johnson & Johnson when they said, well, 15 middle-aged women got blood clots. I'm like, well, one, I'm not a middle-aged woman, and 15 out of 7 million that had gotten the shot that at the time, I'm like, I'll go with those odds. I'm like, I won't even play the lotto with odds that low. I'm like, I require more to spend $5 to win, 500 million. I need better odds than that.
And oh, by the way, guess who is more prone to blood clots demographically? Middle-aged women.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah. It's like I always joke, right? They say, hey, this causes cancer. Now, why? They found it in lab mice. Well, you give enough crap to a lab mouse and it gets cancer does not mean that's what causes cancer, right? But yeah. Anyways, hey, we've hit on a lot of topics. I know we've been running for about an hour and a half now. Is there anything? I guess the last thing I do want to hit on one more topic. It's related. I just want your perspective on this, Mike, and that is, I watched. Like I talked about, the president today, we've seen all the talking heads up there from all the agencies and the Faucis and everyone making the media circles, talking about, Kamala, I guess, is on a nationwide tour pushing it. Now they're asking states to, they got states to get lottery chances. She's on a nationwide tour anywhere that's not near the Mexican border. Right. She's not in the southern part of the nation. True.
Yeah.
And, all about getting the vaccine, the shot. But at the same time, we have hundreds of thousands of illegal aliens coming across the border The other day, they had a sheriff doing a press briefing who did not know he had a hotel full of illegal aliens that are walking around going to Whataburger and all positive. They were hacking and coughing in a Whataburger. Someone called the cops and said, "Hey, there's all these people that are sneezing, hacking, and coughing," and they came and they were all freaking pot. And they went back to the hotel that some Catholic charity or DHS put them up in, and all those people were positive. And they were told them, "Hey, illegal alien, don't leave the hotel. You're positive." Obviously, telling them did not do it. Like,
yeah, because we know that they're very prone to obeying rules.
Right, exactly.
People that crossed our border illegally.
When we talk about mixed messaging, bad messaging, flip flopping, everything we have, and giving I believe a majority of this country not making them into some kind of conspiracy theorists, but giving them substantial reason why to call bullshit and doubt anything that's being told to them. Because you can't have a president sitting there saying one thing, you got to put masks back on, everyone needs to get shot, president, vice president, all of them, and at the same time, let all these people through without even, hey, you want to come in? Before we put you in a hotel, we're giving you a shot. Like, how do you just let these people in and then give them bus tickets and plane tickets to say go anywhere you want in the country? How can you talk out of both sides of your mouth and try to do that with any sense of like without busting a smile or something?
Yeah, I mean, it's just because they've been doing it for so long, and I've spoken about it before, and people forget. I was on the front lines during H1N1. I was during residency during H1N1 here in Texas, and the first person to die in the United States of H1N1 was an illegal alien child who had been smuggled across the border. You won't find that. You can Google that, and you won't find it anywhere. Okay, I know because I know who it was and what hospital it was in because I was working there at the time, and I know the exact circumstances of that. I also know that during the same time, the Border Patrol, on its own accord, took action when they were detaining people to start doing a verbal questionnaire on whether or not people were having any type of respiratory symptoms because they were trying to isolate this H1N1. It got to the White House that they were doing this, and they were told to cease and desist, that they would not ask them that question. And Border Patrol agents were telling me about driving the bus to the detention center with people behind them coughing, and they're not allowed to ask them, who you've been in contact with, who are you planning to be in contact with when we let you go, because inevitably we're going to, or any of that. So there's always been a great deal of hypocrisy. And honestly, I think the hypocrisy that stems out of allowing an open border to begin with, which we know not only doesn't solve the problem and makes the problem worse, it enables the cartels. It's the safest thing for it. If we locked down the border and the border was completely impenetrable, in 3 years, all those little tin-plated dictators to the south of us would clean up their fucking acts, or they'd get overthrown. Right. Shit would get fixed in a hurry. All the corruption, all the cartels are running everything. That shit would be getting fixed. We're enabling it because we're basically a pressure valve to let all these people across, right? And they're a smokescreen because we know the cartels control the border. So they herd them on the other side. They wait till they want to bring drugs across, and they send a surge over here to bring the Border Patrol in that direction so they can come across. But the enablers who want an open border, most of that stems out of white guilt. All right, people who have a lot of deep-seated white guilt, they're racists. So there's some self-loathing there because they feel like they have things they don't deserve. So they compensate for that by it's the white savior complex. Oh, we have to help these people, and we're going to help them by creating a porous border, and they're going to come across. And then how dare we question if they might be bringing disease? That's a very racist thing to even ask them if they're bringing diseases into the country. Only a racist would ask a question like that. So how dare anyone even think that, right? So these are all reflections of their own racism that they won't do that. But the bellwether for this that everybody should be paying attention to, right, is look at all the counties along the border. Those are traditionally very, very blue counties, right? Henry Cuellar, very blue representative from a very blue city in a very blue county. That guy is more against an open border than any voice in Washington. right?
Because
It's
he's
the only
suffering
thing.
from it. His people, his constituents are suffering from it.
His constituents are suffering, and his constituents are against it. You go, I've got family all along the border. You go to a border town, and you can ask somebody who doesn't who that border culture is such that there are people who live on the border, they're second and third generation American citizens, and they still primarily throughout their day speak Spanish. And you can ask one of them in Spanish what their opinion of the border is, and they want that fucker locked down tight.
Yeah. Yeah. I have found a lot of people that have come through the process, the naturalization process and everything else, both from Middle Eastern, Southwest Asian, South American descents, have all been like, yeah, make them go through the process. Like, why,
dude? So we need to be, what we need to be doing is we need to be flying our Terps to Mexico, right? That's how we get the Terps out of Afghanistan and get them into the U.S. is we fly them to Mexico.
Then come right across.
That's probably the easiest way.
Yeah, I told Toby that. Toby, you don't have to worry about trying to get, become a natural U.S. citizen from Canada. Just go to Mexico and walk across. You're good to go. Right? Yeah. They'll take you in open arms. And they'll give you a hotel room and a Whataburger coupon and everything else. No, it's just, I was just, I figured you would think kind of the same way, but I just look at that hypocrisy going, how does these elected people with 2 inches of forehead that procreate and drive cars and are business people can sit there and look at the American people and say, you got to do this, you got to mask up, you got to mask your kids up, that's the right thing to do. It's a safe thing to do. It's the American way to, or even or attempt to quote the Bible, as Kamala Harris tried to do, right? About love thy neighbor, and sit there and then let this happen. And these people, now we're finding out these whistleblowers down at Fort Bliss are these people were calling those whistleblowers, talking about how they were told to hide all the numbers, that COVID is running rampant through these child detention centers, right? Yet no one's covering it. None of the mainstream media is covering it. And so people just think, oh, well, my head's in the sand. My big ass ostrich head's in the sand. I don't see it. It's not being told to me. So it's not happening. Right. Yeah. And it's just, that's what the American people are sick and tired of. I mean, yes, will things change probably in 2022? I think the Democrats are making sure that's going to happen. The problem is how much more damage is going to happen between now and November 2022. Right. Well,
the key is this, the federal government has no business. And this comes from something one of my Democrat friends said a year and a half ago. The federal government has no business in elections. Because I said, well, what's wrong with a federally issued voter ID? And he said, because the federal government has no business in elections. That's state run.
Yep.
So this federal, whatever the fuck Biden's calling it now, this basically it's a voter fraud enabler bill. It's completely unconstitutional, and the states should
the Constitution calls out who is responsible for elections.
Yeah, and this to me. That's grounds for state. You want to talk about grounds for state secession?
Yes.
This whole argument about, okay, Texas thinks it can secede and it really can't, and here's why. And it's like, you know what, man, I'm getting on a fucking conspiracy bent here. But to people that say that, I say, hey, you know what else was illegal? Us dumping the tea in the harbor and then casting off King George's rule. That was illegal.
Yeah.
It was against the law. Okay. So, at what point, it's a two-way street. If the federal government has to, if they need to adhere to it too, and then the states adhere to it as well.
I mean, but look, we can break down the word by word, the definition of the Second Amendment, right? I mean, well, it's nothing to do with hunting, nothing to do with that, right? There's a reason why, the drafters of our Constitution have the Second Amendment in there, and it has to do to keep your government in check. I mean, that's the reality. Well, as good or right or wrong as that was the pain they felt at the time.
Yeah,
which is how the whole damn document came together. Was the pains they felt at the time for harboring of troops and illegal search and seizure, and for the amendment to speak out and not get persecuted and all that kind of stuff, which today is totally out the freaking window, right? Not only just because of social media, but mostly because of social media. You can't even have a free speech or have a civility discussion without being canceled to the degree of the White House is telling Facebook what they should be canceling and shutting down. How is that not a freaking violation of the First Amendment in itself? Right?
Yeah, and I'm not. When it gets into that, I'm not. I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a legal scholar.
No,
So
but my point was just that's where
I've heard the arguments against whether or not that is truly an infringement on the First Amendment or not. Right? You know, it's kind of like I have the right to speak. I have the right to write my message on a piece of cardboard and go stand on the corner and hold it up. Right. That's my right. Nobody can take that away from me. But if I take that piece of cardboard to the local newspaper and I say, I want you to print this in the newspaper, and they say no, that's not violating the First Amendment.
No.
They can say no.
Right.
But where we're getting into trouble is that Facebook is picking and choosing, right?
Right. They're not that unbiased medium that they're protected under law to be. But
right.
My point was so much to get into that is just the fact
but they also don't have to be. But because of that, what is that? They have the protection 230 or whatever it is.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Is that needs to get thrown out the window because
right.
we need to acknowledge that, well, they're abusing it.
Right.
So that's gone. So you are either not responsible at all
for what
and
comes
you let
across
anybody
your medium.
And you let
yes.
anybody say whatever the fuck they want.
Right.
Or you're 100% responsible
liable
for every
slander,
single
everything.
thing that gets said.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
But my point again, that was just all of that stuff came from the pains that our founding fathers suffered, and they put that in there to make sure that never happened again. Now, granted, through amendments and things and just executive orders and all that stuff, there's been people throughout all the years that have found ways around that to some degree, right? Unless again, I'm a big 10th Amendment guy. Unless the Constitution, as the 10th Amendment says, unless it says it is the responsibility of the federal government or it can't be done, then it's on the states. That's that simple, right? Yeah. And the running the elections is a state thing, right? Even the national level election, it's on the states. I mean, in my opinion, even the Electoral College violates that, right? The Electoral College is a federally run, and it's only for one office, right? That violates the state's ability to run their own elections. In my opinion, I've been an anti-electoral college guy my entire life that I had enough common sense to think about it, right? I was way before, Hillary and all that kind of stuff. I was always like, if it can be good enough for anyone else, it should be good for that. Because I've always felt that, hey, if a president if the candidates didn't have to just worry about 10 swing states and they had to go out and fight for every vote, it would be much more fair. And one, much more fair election, in my opinion. But two, I think more people would come out and vote. Because look where I live in New York. I could sit there and go, why do I need to go vote? I know how I know where my electorals are going. Why do I need to go vote for the president? It's going all blue all day, right? Massachusetts, California, you name it. So why should I vote? My vote doesn't matter. That's why people don't go freaking vote. But if they know that raw number tallied up and made a difference, that big, long, big number and that last digit was theirs, people would be out there voting. Right. And these elections, the way we've seen them, would not have turned out. Because people have said to me, well, if that would have been the case, Hillary would have won. I don't think so. Because I think a lot more people would have come out and voted. And then truly, the head of this nation would be elected by the majority of the people. Yeah. If they were the people actually voting with an ID and signature and everything else, not just mailing in and harvesting and all that. But anyways.
No, you make a compelling argument. Whether, to me, the reason that I've always said that we need the Electoral College is because of what I call the moron cluster effect. Is morons like to cluster together with other morons and then live in their little fucking echo chamber of morons, and then they all vote the same way.
But don't you think that's become more of an issue, the echo chambers, since social media? I mean,
oh, totally.
Before social media, there weren't echo chambers. Your echo chamber was your neighbors and maybe some family members a couple times a year. But you really didn't know how. You didn't know how your other family members, even your friends and people, how they voted, what they thought about, unless you truly got together and talked about it. You didn't know what they thought about something that happened in the world because there was no way for them to tell you because they didn't call you up. That rotary dial, right? Take it back a minute since you and I are a little bit older, right? We're like, hey, Bob, I just dialed the 7 digits to get you. What did you think about this? Did you see it did you see Dan Rather, what he said tonight? No, we didn't do that shit, right? Did you watch 60 Minutes? No, you just got together on a Sunday night and cracked a beer. You didn't talk about what happened that morning with Charles Kuralt, right? And Sunday morning, So social media is definitely social media developed the echo chambers, but I think even if people do get together, a lot of people, I think that if you were the idiots, they only do what's convenient for them at the time. They don't really oh, I got to walk in the rain to go vote. Nah, it ain't worth it, right? If they don't think there's going to make a difference. I
Yeah.
just, I think in Australia, it's a law. You have to vote. Everyone has to vote. They come to your house
So
if you don't
it
vote.
is. So it is in Bolivia too.
I'm not
But
sure it's a
here,
good thing or not. I don't know. I don't know
it's.
how I feel.
I don't think it is, and I'll tell you why. Because well, in Bolivia, you can tell it's not, and I can sum it up in two words: Evo Morales.
Hmm.
So Evo Morales became president, and the reason Evo Morales became president. So here's my backstory with Evo Morales: is Evo Morales tried to have me killed when I was in Bolivia. So we were there during the Cocalero uprising, and another SF medic and myself were tending to a lot of casualties and tending to a lot of civilian casualties. So because we were tending to civilian casualties on the Umapar installation, um, word got out. Hey, if you get hurt, that's where they're going to take you, man. So we don't. Yeah, that's where the Umapar are, but we don't want to fuck with that base, man, because that's where the clinic is with the American medicos, and they're going to take care of you. And Evo didn't like that, so he put a price on our head. He's like, somebody needs to take those fuckers out. So there's no love lost between me and Evo Morales, but they were gearing up for an election at that time, not the election that he ultimately was elected president. This was many years before that, but I got a chance to go out and kind of be at some political rallies as they were occurring, and especially in the Cocalero party and the left wing parties, they would get up and do these political rallies where they would make completely outlandish, because there's nobody. This was before the internet, right? So it's not like anybody was live streaming this,
Right.
but they would get up in front of a crowd and they would go, if I am elected, food will be delivered to your door, and medicine will be delivered to your door, and someone will come and we will build you a new house. Like, they were literally saying
Just
shit,
promising
like
everything. Yeah.
and then they could get away with it. They could and these poor campesinos, they're like, fuck, this guy's the shit. Hell yeah, I'm gonna this. That other guy just said, that it was gonna, law and order and some other shit. This guy's literally promising me a place to live and food. I'm all about that. Yeah, I'm gonna vote for this guy. So that's ultimately how, Evo, that type of thing is how Evo got elected, because there's people going in all these outlying areas and making, holding these little rallies on little, basketball courts and soccer fields and in churches, and lying to people.
Like he was running for class president, right? There's going to be pizza every day in the lunchroom, and everyone's going to get half the day.
And bong rips out behind wood shop,
right?
And everything else. And they're not held accountable for it. And plus, just like now happens in the U.S. too, is you had these proctors who would go in with people to help them vote, right? Because they're illiterate, and it's like, okay, yeah, okay, here, come on, okay, all right, yeah, I voted for you, get the fuck out of here. So yeah, they had compulsory voting, but most people didn't know what they were really voting for.
Which is what the Electoral College was created for back in the days when, there was no media, no this, right? They counted on representatives to ride the horse all the way to D.C. and represent them. And you had Electoral College because they were mostly ignorant farmers, a lot of repatriated slaves, right? Ignorant people with no education. And these elected reps went there, and these selected, electorals said, hey, this is how we're voting. Our state's going to vote this way, right?
Yeah, because they might get there and say, well, okay, here, the overwhelming thing that my people said was that they don't want this canal built, right? That was the overwhelming thing. And but they inadvertently all voted for the candidate who wants to build the canal, but that's not what they want, because he's lying to them, because his brother's company wants to build the canal, and they didn't know that. So I'm going to vote the other way.
I'm going to vote on their. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's why I don't think we need it anymore. I think the American.
No, Well, I'd like to think people are better informed, but I think.
Yeah, I agree. I would like to think so too. And what we've seen over the last number of years, maybe that's not. Maybe there's.
But see now it doesn't matter anyway, because we're in a position that the Electoral College would never vote against, because that's unlike the way it was then, that you would hear about it 4 months later,
right?
If you heard about it at all. Now it's going to be, it's almost like, the combine or the NFL draft. It's going to be live streamed, and you're going to be, hey, what the fuck do you mean they didn't vote?
It's so live streamed that now when we don't have the results by on election night, We're like, oh, which the last couple have been that way, right? It's like,
Right.
we got to wait several days or a week, and it's got to be counted. We got to wait on absentee.
Yep.
We're so used to the instant gratification. Even now, as we watch that night on election night, I was right there watching those numbers just rolling, right? Oh, this just fell. This state, this, that, So, anyways, hey, we've been going along. We've been going almost 2 hours. Mike, I'm sorry for keeping
Sorry,
you
man.
on that
I'm
long.
long-winded.
I apologize. I didn't want to keep that long. It was we've been gone for a couple weeks. We had a lot to cover, and I want to thank those that were in the chat. There were a number of questions and topics. There were some questions for you and things that we wanted brought up. I didn't get to all of them because we were just on so much to cover. But hey, I want to just anything else before we let go that you want to let people know, anywhere else, any info on where they can find the book. And I know you hit it at the start of the show, but it's been a couple hours.
Yeah, so follow Graybeard Performance on Instagram. Go to Graybeard Performance. Go to here, best bet. Go to graybeardperformance.com. Scroll all the way down, subscribe to my mailing list. You will know the second the book is available, because it may be available before the launch date, especially in e-format, and there is going to be a discounted ebook for the people who are on my subscription mailing list. I mean, significantly discounted, like almost free. So if you want to get that, if you want to get this book and have this great reference all about health and wellness for dudes over 40, subscribe to my mailing list and you will be among the first to know. You'll be able to go to Amazon and download it in Kindle format.
Awesome. And Rob just put up the graybeardperformance.com website, as he did earlier in the chat. Again, Mike, thank you so much for coming on. Sorry we missed Toby tonight. Now everyone knows we are not the same person. We are truly two different people that we've been on the same night. So
obvious, completely obvious.
That's right. You're a much better looking guy than I am. And again, you have more hair for the time being. All right. Well, hey, thank you so much. Thanks everyone for tuning in, letting us in for almost 2 full hours on your screens and in your ears, whether you're watching it live tonight or you're catching up after the fact. We want to wish everyone a good night. And right now, I don't, honestly, I'll be quite honest. We will be having a show hopefully next week. Again, we're trying to just get everything to sync. And as I mentioned a few weeks ago, we're going to start pre-recording the show and having it all cleaned up and a little bit better on Thursday nights. But anyways, just stay tuned to our socials. Make sure you follow us like us on the Facebook and all that stuff, and keep up on it. But hopefully we'll be able to get to put together a show next week. And until then, we want to wish Mike, I want to thank you. Wish everyone a good night, and we will see all of you later. Well, that wraps up another episode of the Stu and the Nunn Show, and we hope you had as much fun listening to it as we did hosting it for you. Don't forget to like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. You can find all these links at stewandthenunn.com. We will talk to you again next Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. Also, we'd like to thank our sponsors, Commodity Outdoors, Veteran Outdoors, Enlist 9 Fight Company, Warrior Media Solutions, and BooHammer.com. Thank you again, and have a good night.